Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
And somebody knocking at the door. Somebody's ringing the bell. Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert along with Father Joe Grimaldi. Had people over here the other night, Joe.
Who?
Sorry you didn't make the cut.
I never do. Story of my life.
No, you're always busy. That's why. Had a little Labor Day get-together.
How nice.
Had some fabulous barbecue. There's a place in Clawson. I'm going to give them a plug. They're not giving us any money, but I'll give them a plug. The Woodpile in
I've
Clawson.
heard of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you like pulled chicken, pulled pork.
I was there for a.
Come on.
Yeah, I was for
You been there?
A rehearsal dinner.
Oh, I got to tell you something. I met the owners and everybody. We all just had a rocking good time.
Oh, great.
This brisket thing that they brought over. Oof! I'll tell you what. I just told you, it was real good.
Terrific.
It was darn good. So anyway, Julie, my friend, was talking about St. Mary's in Greektown.
Correct.
Well, long story short, there are some storied churches in the Detroit area, ergo the mass mobs, and they all go to see this incredible architecture. On the last podcast, we were talking about John McCain and the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. Cathedrals. How does a church become a cathedral?
It depends on where it is and who the bishop of that diocese is and where does he reside. Now, for example, in Washington, D.C., the Catholic Cathedral, I think, rivals the National Cathedral, and it's almost next to it. It's called St. Matthew's, and that's in Washington, D.C. That's the Catholic Cathedral. That's where the seat of the archbishop or the cardinal or the bishop is, because cathedral, well, you get the word, it comes really from Catholic, which is the chair of the bishop. And so where the chair of the bishop is, wherever he resides, wherever is his church, then becomes the cathedral. Now, all cathedrals are varied. They're not all the same, okay? So, for example, sometimes you may have much more ornate churches than that are not cathedrals, but because the city is old and because a lot of beautiful things have been built in the past, but because the bishop doesn't really reside there. For example, everybody gets confused about Rome, When you look at Rome, you think of St. Peters Basilica. Well, that's not the Cathedral of Rome. You have to go to the other side of the city where St. John Lateran is. That is the Pope's cathedral. The Pope is the Bishop of Rome, and so that his church is in St. John Lateran. Now, the basilica is a basilica because it's beautiful, it's historic, it's where Peter's remains seem to be found, and all of these other things.
The Blessed Sacrament is our cathedral here in the city of Detroit. That is where our Archbishop resides.
That's where he presides.
The Blessed Sacrament has been around. I didn't do my homework on this, but it's been around for over 100 years.
At least.
How did that become the designated place for our Archbishop, our cardinals in the past? Why is that the center point of the Catholic Church for us here in the city of Detroit?
Don't forget that years ago, that was the center of Detroit, in so many different ways. You could see where you have all those beautiful old homes that in that area, on Chicago Boulevard, I think it is. And so that at one time was the center. And because of that, the center of the church then for this city was Blessed Sacrament. And so the designation of cathedral is because that's where the bishop presides. So, however, there are so many more beautiful churches right around there.
But they cannot be designated as cathedrals.
No, a cathedral has a particular title.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to get to. I mean, it's like, so a cathedral is the designation point for the hierarchy of the Catholic Church in that particular area.
Correct.
Okay.
You got it. Yes.
All right. Okay. I did? Ta-da!
Oh, you always do.
What do you know? I finally got something.
You always do.
So, it's a powerful church.
Oh, it is.
Beautiful church.
It is.
What would be the mass size at the Blessed Sacrament each and every Sunday?
I'm ashamed to say.
Yeah? Well, go ahead.
It's down to almost nothing.
Really?
If I'm not mistaken, I'll have to look this up, but I think there's only one Mass a weekend there because people are living away from there.
Mm-hmm.
At one time, that was the center of everything, but not anymore, at least not for Catholics. And so people do go,
Right.
but
that's a popularity contest at that point, I think.
Yeah, but I think it's also the idea that you want to be present at this beautiful church that nobody ever goes to anymore.
Right. Well, then let me stop you there. Detroit is happening again.
Yes.
Detroit is a very exciting, vibrant city. Young people are there.
Correct.
And I'm sure that there's a population of young Catholics that may be starting to repopulate that particular venue as well. You don't foresee the time ever coming when the cathedral, the home of the Catholic Church in Detroit, would move, do you?
No, I don't. But as far as popularity is concerned, I suspect that St. Anne's will become more and more popular. St. Anne's is a beautiful church. It's one of the first churches in the whole country. And it's the patroness of Michigan is St. Anne. The patroness of Detroit is St. Anne. And that church, which is a historic building, is St. Anne's. Now, they're looking to make it a basilica. A basilica is a title of honor, but also related to the architecture, but not anymore, more the idea of honor. Basilica is a form of architecture, was originally. Mm-hmm. But now I think whenever you hear the term basilica, like the Shrine of the Little Flower is a minor basilica. You have...
I did not know that.
Yeah, St. Anne's would be a basilica. Well, not yet. They're hoping to make it a basilica because of its location, because of its importance, because she is the patroness of Detroit, right downtown.
What is the process for a church like St. Anne's to become or designated a basilica?
There is a petition that is done between the pastor of the church and Rome. And the people in Rome have to evaluate if there are too many basilicas, of course, then it's nothing. So they want to make sure that it deserves the title of a basilica. In my mind, my humble opinion,
yes.
I'm not an expert here, but I would say that St. Anne's certainly has the qualifications to become a basilica.
What about St. Florentine in Hamtramck?
Well, I don't know much about it, but architecturally it's beautiful.
It's stunning.
I do a lot of weddings
at
a place called Sweetest Heart of Mary, which is another beautiful church, beautiful architecture, absolutely beautiful. And right 2 or 3 blocks away is St. Josaphat. They were built around the same time by the Polish people. The Polish wanted their own church. The bishop fought them at the time years ago. They said, we have too many churches already. As a matter of fact, I think it was at a time when they were deciding where the cathedral should be and all of this other stuff. To make a long story short, so now you have 2 churches about 3 or 4 blocks apart from each other.
Yeah.
They're 2 actually stunning churches. However, the population isn't there. So what do? They're able to have a lot of what they call destination weddings. So these destination weddings take place in those churches, even though the people are not parishioners. They're coming from afar,
right,
so that they could have their wedding in this beautiful church. You have the long aisle, the very intricate and beautiful, but basically those churches depend on weddings so that they can survive. they don't have the population anymore that they used to have.
Why did that particular church, Sacred Heart of Mary, I've heard you mention it a number of times.
Yeah.
It's stunning. And so they're reliant on that sort of income to keep the church, physical plant, and all operating.
Correct. At least that particular church, St. Mary's in Greektown, or near Greektown, is a very popular church for a number of reasons. First of all, there are those people that still would like the Tridentine Mass, the Latin Mass, and they do hold that Mass there a number of times. So the Mass in Latin takes place there on a regular basis. The people that are attracted to sacred music, the Gregorian chant, and so on, they make an effort to do that. So they have to support themselves too, though, although they seem to attract a lot of people who are able to support it financially. Mm-hmm. And so it seems to be doing okay. I'm not the expert, believe me, but from what I hear, it seems to be doing okay.
It would be probably a great experience for a family to go to Mass at that church.
Yes. I would
maybe
think
a Latin Mass and introduce that to, oh gosh, Joe, I mean, how long's it been? The Latin Mass went away.
60 years ago, something like that, yeah.
Was it 60 years ago the Latin Mass went away?
I'm going to say around 1960, 65.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm thinking too, yeah.
But basically, I don't know, to be honest, if it would be... the Latin Mass is particular in the sense that there are certain people that are attracted to it, others who are not.
Yeah.
So it has to be people who are interested in going... listening to Gregorian chant, for example. Mm-hmm. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Some people who don't even know anything about the Gregorian chant.
Who maintains the choir for that?
Well, the church itself has to, and it has to come from the revenues that they get from not only the regular, in quotes, parishioners, whoever they may be, even though they don't live there, but they're people that send in a check every so often, but also with donors that want to see that continue. I know that there are special events that take place in that church. Sacred concerts, for example, may take place in that church. And the reason I know that is because I hear it advertised at times that on a given day, on a Sunday afternoon, a concert's going to be held there, and the revenues will go for this, that, or the other thing. But they do attract people who are interested in quotes, what the old churches used to look like. Mm-hmm. The symmetry, the detail of the architecture, the stained glass windows, all of these things.
Right. I hate to say this, but it almost distracts somebody like me from the Mass by looking at each and every one of the stained glass facades and going, oh, okay, wow, look at, you know what I mean? All of a sudden I realize the Mass is going on, Ken. Your eyes should be straight ahead.
But there are people that don't find the English liturgy to their liking. Uh-huh. And they still remember. You know why? There's a lot of people that like the mystery of not knowing what is being said.
Oh.
For example.
Wow.
When the Mass is in Latin.
Yeah.
How many people know Latin today?
Nobody. Yeah.
It seems to be, in quotes, it's not necessarily so, but it seems to be a much holier event if everything is being said in Latin. The same thing that you just brought up, the style of the church, the stained glass windows, all lend themselves to a mystery that attracts a lot of people. What happened is, in one of the criticisms of modern churches, is the fact that they're too bland, that you just go in and you think you're in the middle of an office building.
Yeah, brick and mortar.
Yeah. So whereas those churches still maintain the artistic beauty of the ancient liturgy, and so that it attracts people. I certainly have nothing against it, believe me. I think people should see it because it is beautiful. However, if they really want to practice their religion you would hope they know what they're saying, as opposed to just going because, oh, that sounds beautiful. It sounds mysterious.
Of course.
Sounds, I mean, I don't know what's being said, but it's nice,
Right.
So,
I find myself when I'm in a church that's over, 100 years, 125 years old, wondering about the person that placed that particular, who did the work on that particular pillar, that particular column, that particular piece of stained glass. Do you remember the day that the stained glass started to go in? I don't know why I find something peacefully romantic about that.
I think there is, from what you say, but it's much easier today to figure out who it is that did that first than it is when you're in the middle of Rome, where things happened 500 years ago.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I still remember going to school at the Angelicum, which is the University of St. Thomas in Rome, and the building itself dates back 17th century. So if you could imagine the stonework that's there, and it's mind-boggling.
Isn't it?
At least here, 100 years is nothing, you know what I mean, by comparison.
Well, it is to me.
Oh, it is to me, too, believe it.
Final question for you. Is there one church, basilica, or cathedral that completely overwhelmed you when you were saying Mass?
Well, I did a wedding once at St. Peter's in Rome, the Basilica, and the wedding took place in one of the side chapels. The side chapel, and there's many of them in that church, all around the periphery of it. The side chapel we were in held 350 people. So, I mean, to me, that's St. Peter's Basilica is overwhelming.
Of course.
St. Paul's is like a big football field. It's gigantic. St. Paul's outside the walls, they call it, because there's a St. Paul's within the walls, but that's Episcopal. St. Paul's outside the walls is Catholic, and that's as big as St. Peter's, almost as big anyway. St. Peter's is known as probably the biggest church of any kind in the world as far as area. So that's overwhelming just to be in there. You certainly feel your dependence on Almighty God. Mm-hmm. You certainly feel how I want to say, like, and I don't believe I'm nothing, but you feel like you're nothing by comparison to what's surrounding you.
Yeah, I think overwhelmed is the operative word.
Yeah.
When you think about the structure, the view, the purpose, and especially the acoustics, when you talk about the sounds that come out of those wonderful old buildings, you just think, wow.
I think you're so right. You're right on. And I think you usually are. And one of the things that
that doesn't happen very often.
No, it happens a lot. So one of the things that comes to mind when you're speaking, I think at some point we might want to talk about music, liturgical music.
Oh, good call.
Which is related to the architecture, the art, and all of that of the church, particularly when we were talking a little bit about the Gregorian chant, for example.
Talk to the people behind the music that goes on in the church.
I think that would be great.
Well, let's do that.
Yes.
Let's set that up.
All right.
If anybody knows how to do it, it's you.
Well, I think you too. Okay.
All right. Listen, as Father Joe likes to say, see you at Mass, and we'll see you the next time on the Father Joe podcast. I'm Ken Calverty's Father Joe. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here, and see you soon. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.